Am I the asshole for hiding my boyfriend's anime body pillow while my parents were visiting? Original post. My boyfriend, M32, and I, F27, have been together for a year. He's only met my parents once over the holidays last year because they live pretty far away. They've been visiting this past week, and since he and I just moved in together, they were excited to see our new place and get to know my BF a little more. We have an extra bedroom, and this has become my boyfriend's gaming room for the most part, but we agreed when guests come over it would be a second bedroom. He really likes video games and anime in particular, so he has a lot of toys and artwork that he's collected over the years from different games and such. One thing he has is this anime body pillow that features a sexy anime girl on it. He also has a mousepad for his gaming computer that resembles a busty anime girl. Before my parents came over, I asked him to take down his toys and stuff so they could be comfortable. I was upset to see that he left the body pillow and the mousepad in place. I don't really feel comfortable with either item, but he's really into anime, so I've always kind of left it alone. But I absolutely didn't think it was appropriate to leave it there when my parents would be staying over. I took the cover off the body pillow and put the pillow in the closet, and I put the mousepad in a drawer in our room. When my parents arrived and we showed them to their room, my BF noticed the missing pillow and mousepad. Later, when we were in bed, he brought it up to me and asked why I hid them. I told him I didn't think my parents would feel comfortable with those things in the bedroom, and when they leave we can put them back. My BF got really upset. He told me that he feels like I'm ashamed of his interest in anime. He said he spent his whole life feeling like people think he's weird for being into anime, and he didn't expect his own GF to be just like everyone else. The next day I noticed him taking some of his manga books off our bookshelf and putting them into a box. I asked him why, and he said something like, "I'm putting them away so you don't have to look at them anymore." I feel really bad. I feel like I hurt him, but I just really didn't think my parents would feel comfortable sleeping in a room with those items. But now he's just acting so distant and cold, and he's not really engaging with my parents at all. They keep asking me what's wrong, and I don't know what to say. AIT? Top comment. Talking mice. There's a huge difference between anime video game decorations and sexualized anime content. A busty mousepad and a sexy body pillow would most definitely make anyone feel uncomfortable. I get that it's his space too, but I think a small amount of compromise for a limited time isn't a problem at all. He might see it as you being embarrassed of his interests, but the reality is most people aren't comfortable with sexualized decor. It's not about anime at all. NTA, he really needs to have more consideration for others. OOP. That's exactly my feelings too. There's other stuff in the room that's anime gaming related that was left up, but it was more the sexual stuff I didn't feel comfortable leaving out for my parents. OOP is voted NTA update. Edit. Thank you for all of the responses. And sorry it took me a few days to update. I was waiting for my parents to leave so I could talk to my boyfriend about all of this. I read through the comments and it kind of validated something I already was feeling. Sexual decor aside, the way he acted the next day when he was putting the books away really bothered me. I ended up explaining the situation to my parents, and they weren't exactly thrilled by his reaction either. I got the feeling after this trip that they don't really approve of him. Which is neither here nor there. I'm 27 and I'm old enough to make my own choices. But above everything else, my parents mean a lot to me. I never get to see them, and it was important to me that my BF would be present and treat them well while they were here. After they left, I drove them to the airport. BF refused to come. I came back from the airport and found a couple trash bags outside the door. Turns out that once I left, my BF started throwing all of his anime things into these bags. I asked why, and he said something along the same lines as before, that clearly his interests weren't welcome in my home and he'd keep them in his car until he figured out what to do with them. I kinda snapped. I'd been keeping it together all week for my parents, but I had enough at this point. I told him I never asked him to get rid of his anime stuff, just that it wasn't appropriate for my parents while they were staying with us. I told him this reaction is unfair and he's being manipulative. I told him that this week was supposed to be about him getting to know my parents, but he was too fixated on this anime issue to even spend any real time with them. He then called me manipulative for making him believe that I was cool with his love for anime for the past year when I was clearly ashamed of it. He also said he didn't want to be a part of a family that doesn't appreciate anime. We went back and forth for a while, and then I told him we needed space. I wasn't even really planning that, but it came out and it felt like the right thing for me. Well, he then started crying a lot and apologizing and immediately tried to take back what he said, but I was just done at this point. He left eventually, and now I'm here in this apartment alone. Well, and the mousepad and body pillow, lol. He left those behind. Anyway, I don't really know if we're broken up officially or what, but it seems to be heading that way. I'm just feeling awful, and I almost wish this all happened before my parents visited because I feel like it tainted the whole trip. But yeah. Thanks for the replies, guys, and for helping me open my eyes a bit. Editor's note: I couldn't decide if this one was concluded or ongoing. I've marked it as ongoing for now, but if people disagree I can change it. After confronting my husband's friend about pressuring his sick fiancé into having kids, I question if I overstepped or just told the truth. Original post, September 7, 2024. Obligatory throwaway: my 32F husband, 36M, has a high school friend, 36M. Let's call him John. John is a typical jock, athletic, good-looking, popular with girls. But I've been around enough to see and hear him being questionable towards women. To the story, we were in a group of friends and I was introducing them to my new baby, 0F. Important info. I had a miserable pregnancy. The topic of having kids came up and John started saying how he and his fiancée, 32F, would be the next. More important information: his fiancée Janet is an amazing lady. Kind, smart, gentle. Recently she has been through a lot, lost her dad and her health has been terrible. Not going to say what, but she has a disease that causes headaches, weakness, dizzy spells, fainting, extreme fatigue. She has become more and more emotionally and physically dependent on him. On top of that, she, and I, come from another country. It means her family and support system are not here. Back to the situation. I asked her if they plan to have kids after the wedding, that is in 2 years. I thought that because it gives her time to recover. He doesn't let her answer and say they agreed they would only get married after having kids. I am surprised for 2 reasons. She always said she wanted kids after marriage and her health is not good. She doesn't say anything, but looks sad. I argue that it doesn't seem like a good plan, and that a pregnancy now could put her health at risk. He said her fertility window is almost closing and that is now or never. I start getting angry, and we discuss. I ended up saying he is selfish and this decision is only based on his wants and needs and is hurting her. Basically a form of abuse. The room got quiet and we ended up leaving. My husband later agreed with me, but said it was not my place to say anything. Our friends are mixed, saying someone had to say it, but that I was too harsh. I feel maybe was not my place and I was being a busybody, but after being through a hard pregnancy myself, without my family, I know how hard it is. And my husband is a great supportive guy. Meanwhile, John leaves her alone all the time to party and enjoy life. He is dooming someone that trusts him blindly into a horrible situation. Aita? Relevant comments. Commenter. What you said was the truth, but you were a little harsh. I think you were right to say it because the guy obviously doesn't care how he treats his wife. I also think you should ask * his fiancée in private how she feels about her situation. OOP. I agree that I came out too strong. I feel protective towards her. She is so sweet and nice. I feel she doesn't deserve the way he treats her. But when I say something in private, she keeps repeating that she loves her and she never met a man like him. I feel she thinks that he is out of her league or something. Commenter. Honestly, I think he knows what he's doing. There's a reason he won't legally commit to her until after she has children, and it's not a kind or responsible reason. So I don't think he's going to care about what you said or the potential health outcomes for your friend. It may be satisfying to call him out, but is it going to change his mind? OP, I also found this part extra strange. The first time we met she literally said how her dream was to have a wedding and then kids. She even repeated that recently. She comes from a Catholic upbringing, like me. It doesn't seem like a thing you change your mind about easily. Commenter. ESH, except his wife. In this conversation fight both you and John are treating his wife as if she's a child that can't make decisions for herself. He is talking over her but you are also making assumptions about their decisions based on her looking sad. OOP, I admit I should have talked to her first. But we just had a conversation about her health and she was telling me how some days she can barely make it out of bed. His smugness made me so angry, as if he knows what is best and no one can question him. Commenter. Honestly, I would be pissed if someone started talking and arguing about my health issues in public. I'm a really private person. Does the rest of the group know about her health issues? You didn't speak to her, but made assumptions. She might not confide in you anymore. He might be an asshole, but she is an adult and you could have made it worse for her. I had 2 awful pregnancies and was alone without family around, but my husband is amazing as well. I get where you are coming from, But seriously, be more aware next time and show your friend some respect. And don't talk about people's medical history in front of people. ESH, obviously not your friend. OP, I see your point. The group started with some people that studied together and expanded with their SO. We meet often and are friendly. When she got sick, we took turns visiting, checking up on her when she was alone for a reason or another. Everyone seems to try to be her support system, but seem afraid to say anything to John. Commenter. He probably does and just doesn't care. John is aware that his wife isn't in a good place for kids. If he and OP's husband are such great friends, why didn't he say anything? Call out your friend's shitty behavior, people. OP, my husband is great, but everyone jokes he has a man crush on John. He was John's sidekick in school and doesn't listen when I point out some comments John makes. OOP is voted NTA but opinions are mixed. Update, September 10, 2024, 3 days later. Thank you for all the answers. I was blown away by all the perspectives and was able to see further into the situation. I reached out to Janet and invited her for a coffee. We usually talk with more people around, so this was the first time we were alone. I started by apologizing. I said I should not have said all these things in front of everyone and acted as if she cannot speak for herself. She said she was initially embarrassed, but after further thought she started questioning if it was really a good idea to have kids now and has scheduled a talk with a specialist. She said John doesn't know, and she wants to have more information before talking to him. She also said he was furious afterwards and they had a terrible fight. So you guys were right, it was not the right move, and he did blame her, saying she should have defended their position and that she knew having kids was a must for him. He also said that a woman would only be a real woman if she gave her man biological children. She asked him what if she could not, and apparently he never answered. It seems more has happened in the fight, but I decided not to pressure her and let her tell me what she was comfortable with. Lastly, she decided to take some time off and go home to her mom, and I think it is a great idea. The saddest for me was that she cried saying someone like her would never get a man like him, and that she was scared of losing him. That it was like she found a golden ticket. I held my tongue, because I personally do not think he is a prize. But again I took the advice and did not pressure further. I also had a long talk with my husband, and we are at odds. He still thinks I am overreacting and that John poops gold. I am frustrated, but not much I can do for now. Not a fantastic update, but it has only been a few days, so I will let you know if there is anything big happening. Am I the asshole for being disappointed when my boyfriend did not give me the first slice of cake? Original post, September 8, 2024. Why, 20F, AM from Brazil, and here it is tradition that in a birthday party the person whose birthday is being celebrated gives the first slice of cake to their favorite person after everyone sings the birthday song. This week was my boyfriend's, 24M, and he had 3 celebrations, one with his birth family, one with his adoptive family, and one with friends, which was a surprise picnic that I planned and organized. He has had a very difficult life and his moms are really important to him as the adoptive mom saved him from starving as a kid and raised him, giving him a chance at life, and his birth mom battled very hard against poverty all her life, struggling and fighting to keep her kids alive and well. So of course I never expect him to give me the first slice of cake at the family celebrations. But then there was the picnic. I spent weeks planning and reaching out to all his childhood friends, making sure they would come. I went to bed at 2 a.m. the night before making him his favorite cake. I spent a shit ton of money with food, drinks and gifts. I didn't do it because of the first slice of course, but at all times I couldn't help but think, now is my turn. Turns out it was not. He has a best friend of many years, she and him are like brother and sister, they went through a lot of shit together. Like her losing her mom, him not having food to eat at home as a teen. And even though they are so close, they don't get the chance to see each other very often now as they both are very busy with life and all its shit. So of course he took the chance to show her some appreciation. She was so happy and, of course I understood the situation, he sees me every day and has the chance to honor me almost daily. He always makes me feel really loved and all, and he can't do that with her. Also, I understand he wanted to show her that him having a relationship does not mean she is not his sister anymore, a priority in that sense. I am not jealous, because I know there is nothing romantic between them. She is pretty gay and polygamous. He is the most monogamous guy in the world and he worships me. But I couldn't help but at least feel a bit, I don't know, do I need to explain? Maybe disappointed, maybe unappreciated. I feel like I can never be the most important person in the room. We always talk about getting married, We are each other's life and still. Get me? And also, he did this in front of everyone. In front of all our mutual friends who don't really know her and all she means to him, so I also felt kind of embarrassed. I am just venting. I want to go home and cry a bit. I know I am being childish, but I guess I will keep it that way for now. Update September 8, 2024, 6 hours later. My boyfriend did not give me the first slice of cake. Update. Hi everyone, thank you for all the kind comments. Me and my boyfriend have very different energy spans, so I usually leave hangouts a lot earlier than him, which is what happened today. So I left, posted the story on Reddit, took a shower and started to paint my nails. About 3 hours after I left, my boyfriend called me. I picked him up and he was sobbing. Notice he does not have Reddit and he does not speak English, so he didn't know about the post, and I had not talked about my feelings with him yet. So he calls me absolutely pouring, saying he was going home and he has had the best day of his life. That he loves me so much for doing this for him, and spends the next 15 minutes talking between sobs about all the effort I put into the birthday celebration, thanking me for every single one of the things I did. Then he mentioned the cake slice. He said to me that throughout his entire life, because he has always had birthdays in his mom's houses, he had never given a first slice to his best friend, who went through all that with him, and that me being empathetic enough to let him do this was honestly one of the most special things I had ever done for him. He told me she had been going through some very important stuff and he was not around ever because of work and college, and she was feeling very left behind because of this, which is a huge thing since they are basically brother and sister. So the cake made her cry so much. It was the first time he had ever done this and she finally felt like he had not forgotten about her. And then, because I made that much effort for him, he asked me to rest. He told me that this next week was going to be entirely for him to show me appreciation. He asked me to please for once not sabotage him showing me love and pampering me because I feel like I don't deserve it. Because he was going to take his savings to take me out and spend the week giving me surprises. I know him well enough to expect some love notes. Him showing up to surprise me at my place, maybe even a song written for me. He also invited me to spend the weekend at his place, just the two of us. He lives with his family and they are all going to the beach, leaving the house empty. So that he can cook me dinner and give me one of his 1-hour-long full-body massages. They are my favorites. Then, after he said all that, I took the opportunity to tell him about how I felt today. He listened quietly, and when I was finished, he apologized, saying that he did not realize that was how I felt, that was not his intention. He just thought that did not mean as much to me as it would have meant for his best friend, so he decided to honor her that way and then honor me differently. With my Princess Week. But he told me he understood how I felt and that he was sorry anyway. We talked a bit more, but we got over the stuff pretty quickly and it all ended with us gossiping about the day, because two friends of ours who don't really get along very well apparently went back home together and half drunk after I left. Man, I love gossip. Well friends, I suppose that's my update. Maybe this is the day Reddit realizes that emotions are complicated and life is too, which is why small moments do not define a relationship or someone's feelings. How we react to the situation and deal with it does. I love my boyfriend, and he loves me a lot too, and that does not mean he does not have any family beyond me. That also does not mean I'm not allowed to feel sad. I have the right to feel what I feel and to be welcomed in that feeling. Being validated. I will marry this man, mark my words. My doctors told my husband and me that our baby has many birth defects. I want to abort, he does not. My doctors told my husband, 30M and I, 31F, that our baby has many birth defects. I want to abort, he does not. This was a planned baby and I'm absolutely devastated. Me and my husband met in college and have been married for 6 years now. We have one son who is now 4 years old. I know some people are gonna wonder, but yes, we did discuss our moral political views before even getting engaged and we're both pro-choice. When we were 21 and 20 we made a stupid mistake that ended in a pregnancy. We were both flat broke and not at all ready for kids. I decided to terminate and he fully agreed with and supported me. He loves our son so much and is an amazing father. He confided in me that he loved the idea of having a daughter as well. Luckily we're in a good financial place so I agreed and we started trying for a second baby. We conceived fairly quickly and were overjoyed. We also soon discovered that we're having a girl. My husband was so excited. As soon as he was told he went all out and started to plan her nursery. He asked our son to help him pick which shade of pink he wanted, which crib to get, what the theme should be, etc. It was all so adorable. I don't want to reveal any personal medical history, So forgive me for being vague with the descriptions. At our last doctor's visit a few days ago, we were given the news that our daughter has severe birth defects. They think that she could possibly survive the birth, but any life that she gets to experience will be painful for her. There have been medical cases of babies with the same conditions to survive from early childhood to even the teenage years. These poor children suffer with so much pain and are uncomfortable their entire lives. They are very low functioning and need around-the-clock care as well as several uncomfortable surgeries to try and give them a better quality of life. We were both heartbroken and cried for hours together in the car. Then we drove home in silence. Neither of us said anything until my husband began to quietly mumble his thoughts. He was going on and on about how we needed to schedule another doctor's appointment so we know what medical equipment we'd need to buy for her, and we should renovate the nursery again so we could care for her more easily. He said that he'd definitely have to talk to his boss so he can take a longer paternity leave. He wants to be by her side in the NICU until we can take her home. He talked about how we'd have to ask his mom to babysit our son more often while she's a newborn. He even said that maybe we could sell one of our cars, move to a smaller house, and take our son out of private school so we'd have more money to pay for our daughter's care. I was silent until he asked me what I thought. I was blunt and said that I think we should terminate the pregnancy. Now I feel bad for saying it that way, but I was still frazzled from the news. This made him very upset. He began to cry and ask why I don't want our daughter, even with disabilities. I mentioned our previous abortion. He said it was different because it was unplanned and we had no way to take care of the child. Now we're in a pretty good place financially, so theoretically we could shoulder the cost of our daughter. I have a bit of personal history with this type of situation. My best friend in high school was at my house all the time because her parents were way too busy with her severely autistic older brother. They did love her, but she was pushed to the side her entire childhood. I told him this story. He said that we'd do better by our son and daughter. My best friend's parents were stupid for having a second kid after they already had a disabled one. He then seemed hopeful for a minute and asked if I was just afraid. He promised that he'd be by my side the whole time and we could do this together. I told him it's not about fear. Our daughter will be in pain constantly if she's born alive. It would be a short and painful life for her. I love this baby so much already, I don't want her to suffer like that. He began to yell that even if she doesn't live long we could still pour our hearts and souls into making her life as fulfilling as possible. I didn't respond and he stormed inside. It's been a couple days now and he won't even look me in the eyes. He sits in the new nursery for hours. Our son is very confused. I know he's grieving, but I really don't want to go further with this pregnancy. I love him so much, I have no idea what to do now. TLDR, husband and I learned that our planned daughter has many birth defects that would devastate her quality of life. I want to abort in order to save her from an existence full of pain. My husband wants to keep her so we can love her for however long she lives. Relevant comments. My daughter has a 20-year-old autistic bipolar daughter, my granddaughter. There are 3 daughters in total, one older and one younger. The autistic child cannot self-entertain and will always have the mentality of a 6-year-old child. My daughter's marriage fell apart and the ex-husband wasn't around to take any responsibility. Plus, my daughter was rarely reimbursed for medical and dental out-of-pocket expenses. The oldest daughter, the glass child, was parentified so her mother could work nights. She now has gone no contact with her mother and blocked her everywhere due to her childhood losses. The younger child has lived in the shadow of the autistic sister and has many issues going on. My daughter can't leave the two of them at home because the older sister becomes violent. When toddlers, the youngest had to have her hair cut short because her autistic sister would pull her long hair out by the roots and rip her scalp all bloodied. It was awful. My daughter is movie star beautiful, but men who have professed their love for her and had wanted to marry her, but not the disabled daughter. My autistic granddaughter cannot self-entertain and is a Velcro person, so is always there. It's been a family tragedy. My daughter is a prisoner in her own home. My ex-husband would not help. I work full-time and had gone to school at night, so I was pretty much depleted. Plus, my autistic granddaughter is hard to keep. I love my granddaughter, but I would not wish her life or my daughter's life on my worst enemy. It hurts me to say this, but it would be a mercy to not bring this severely disabled child into the world. What a cruel thing to bring this unborn child into the world. The husband is out of his mind with grief and cannot see the whole picture. The wife needs to make up her own mind, even with the sad choice to divorce if it comes to it. To the haters out there, unless you have walked in another person's shoes, you cannot understand this catastrophic situation. I would also want to terminate. Can you guys talk to a therapist? Do you have time? OP's reply: we have a bit of time, but if we don't resolve this soon, termination will be impossible. Update. Thank you all so much for the advice and kind words. I'm sorry I haven't responded to many chats and comments. I've read through them all. The empathy and compassion shown is truly touching. After I made my original post, my husband and I rushed to get a second opinion. Nothing changed and it was still our original diagnosis. Once I learned that, I scheduled the termination for as soon as physically possible. I didn't tell my husband at first. He kept on raving about how we could give her as much love in her life as we can. I feel bad for this now, but I snapped and angrily told him I was terminating the pregnancy. That I know how he feels, but I will not allow my daughter to suffer just because he wants to love her. He was very angry with me after I put my foot down. After he realized his pleading wouldn't change my mind, he didn't speak a word to me. It was like he refused to even acknowledge my existence. I was terrified that he'd go and leave me all alone with the scraps of our family. I tried to explain it to my son, but I think he still doesn't understand. Then, the night before the procedure, he stepped into my room and apologized for everyone and promised to be more supportive of me from now on. I was so happy and relieved I started to sob and he held me all night. My original plan was that my mom would drive me to the hospital, then once it's done a close friend would take me home. Since it was only the night before, he said he couldn't miss a full day of work, but really wanted to drive me home. I agreed to let him and then the procedure was done in the morning. My son is having a long sleepover with my best friend's family. I don't want him to see me like this. The next morning the termination was done. It went fine with only minor physical pain, but the emotional toll was crushing. After I was done, he didn't show up to get me. I waited for hours and he wouldn't answer any of my calls. I ended up having to call a friend out from work to take me home. When we got there, I saw just one note on the counter saying he can't do this. A few of our daughter's special toys were removed from her nursery. My entire life has fallen apart in a matter of days. I asked my mom to watch my son for a little while. I still can't contact my husband. Everything feels so pointless. Relevant comments. I'm a doctor and I work in an ICU seeing children exactly like the one you may have had. If I were in your position, I would have done the same thing. Let me be clear and say that nobody in your partner's position has a clue of the emotional toll that parents of severely disabled children go through. Everyone thinks they know what it would be like, but they're often wrong. And more often the parents of the child are struggling a lot. Whatever happens, FYW, I think you made the harder, but smarter decision. Who's to say your husband wouldn't leave the exact same way after seeing your daughter suffer alive in actual pain? Leaves you a note on the table one night, I can't do this, and leaves you to care for her yourself. We couldn't save our 15-year marriage, because my wife friend-zoned me and wants a platonic companionship. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14. We absolutely adore and work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much, we essentially became roommates co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me, and that she only saw me as a best friend. That she only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy and let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was I don't know, and that, I have built up resentment towards you but I don't know where it stems from. As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do or what is it about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always I don't know. She stated that she does love me but it's not the same. That she has been feeling disconnected for years and that our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only the children for now and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like at this point I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means with companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and/or sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which to my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc. And we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things and as expected it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell or feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this only when I'm high or drunk sex because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young and healthy individuals and good looking. We both have good standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. My wife of 15 plus years is no longer in love with me and doesn't know why, and now says she can only have sex while intoxicated or I need to settle for a platonic sexless marriage, and she doesn't know why that is, but it is what it is and I'm in need of insight or advice. Relevant comments, missing reasons. Commenters looked at his history and found they were swingers. We did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it and we have established it's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapist and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say, I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging is something that is affecting her view on our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. Truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing things head on. No matter how painful. If this is a consequence of swinging, this issue existed long before the lifestyle. I agree that swinging wasn't a solution in the end. Never was meant to be. It was more of discovering or exploring if she felt any different. If that was the case, we agreed we would talk about it, and if we arrive at the conclusion that myself is the problem and she has no problem with other men, we would part ways amicably. However, this wasn't the case. She didn't like sex or intimacy there either. She was very much in control of that whole swinging situation. And yes, I went along with it. What gives? It felt very organic and it was her effort, if you will, to discover more and learn more about our current issue. I saw it as a means of learning if I'm the problem and was very much ready to accept that. It turns out it wasn't the case. 6 years of misery sound awful. I would very much hate that. OP on if this started when the swinging ended. Finally, a comment on the swinging topic with actual insight. You're absolutely right about the fact that the swinging experience had changes that will impact our marriage and lives forever. For example, the best thing swinging taught us, even above sexual exploration, was the level of transparent and open communication it requires. We would literally have mental orgasms having dialogue with such intentionality. We implemented that in all our lives and areas, including parenting with our children. She even agrees that we're thankful for that takeaway from our swinging. Honestly, I cannot stress it enough with people here. Yes, we explored swinging. However, it was actually a positive experience. When we decided to stop, it was because it felt natural and organic to just do so. In fact, we met with that couple who we meshed super well with the night before. We actually enjoyed the actual friendship and even spent time as vanilla friends. So it wasn't because of something negative. Wife mentioned that it certainly wasn't any better, and since she's not enjoying the sex, we both agreed there's no point to this. I agreed and we moved on, and we're still friends with those people because it's great. All that said, I know, more often than not, swinging causes massive issues. However, this was something we explored in pursuit of a solution to an issue that was present way before. I think of it as taking a practical approach to trying to solve the problem. Update 1. I wanted to give you guys an update of how the therapy session with my wife went this week. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses, comments, suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally, mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and how having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies, 2 kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions directly, mostly from my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we did miss out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life. Especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes 2 to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate, that I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or sexual with me as of now, and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which for the 50th time said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much in existence when we tried this. We, both, really have no issue with this. We know it happened, we tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct and said that I will not be accepting this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions, and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimacy and sexual relationship. I expressed how I'm not going to be a convenience, and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce, However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues that divorce will be the only outcome. Of course tears were involved and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still nothing was said and I walked out very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short and cold and transactional. The saddest part is realizing, this dynamic already is very cold and transactional. Here's where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her roommate co-parent dynamic without reproach and that it should be no mistake that I'm not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and started to basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things to which I declined and it really shocked her. She was upset saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night she was crying telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been very hard to be cold and distant because as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and love on her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180 and let's just say, there has been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50ths and she lost her shit. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, hey, friends go in 50-50ths and as your friend I expect nothing less. This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain, because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realization that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic and I wish you all the best. TLDR. My wife friend-zoned me wants to just co-parent at my expense, but I started the 180 method to try and find a solution because she doesn't want to work on us, which seems to be working on getting her out of her rut and helping me discover more about how she feels. Also, therapy is paramount and highly recommended to all couples. Relevant comments. Comment 1. So, I'm going to assume that your wife has a lucrative job and you are both going 50-50ths on childcare, as you both work and share children. Because otherwise, this approach is just plain financially abusive, and if you're planning on saying I won't pay the bills unless you have sex with me, sexually abusive as well. Assuming that is the case and you aren't a total POS, I'm actually interested in how this works out for you. I feel like I'm in an unstated, similar situation. We both work and have blended finances, but we don't go to bed together or eat together, have barely any intimacy, a kiss or two, hugs every couple days, and spend maybe 8 hours a week together, just the three of us, him, me, and the toddler. Even less just the two of us. Maybe 3 hours a week. Otherwise, he is on his game, or out playing sports, watching YouTube, or whatever else he does. It barely feels like a friend situation, let alone a marriage. I'm curious how she handles it, as the spouse that presumably was pulling away first. I hope you keep us updated. OP, yes, we both have degrees, good careers, and while I make significantly more money, her salary is very proficient and above average. The 50/50ths was not to cripple nor hurt her financially, that is cruel, but mostly to send a message on what a roommate dynamic looks like in the real world. I really dislike how people immediately jump to conclusions about the finances as a way of manipulating her. It's not the case at all. Plenty of money left over after bills. However, 50/50ths means she has less whatever money, and the understanding that roommates share everything equally. Prior to this 180 approach, we did everything together and with our kids. We always saw ourselves as a unit that does things together. Both alone and with the kids too. That's changed now where I'm choosing to focus on more independent types of pastimes and focus. That is what has sparked her reaction and realization of there's more than just roommates here. Comment 2. How does one dump half of the household expenses on the other person if they share a bank account? Or are your finances kept separately? Just curious how this would work if applied to my life. OP, excellent question. We shared everything. The proposed 50/50ths was suggesting we place the necessary amount to pay bills in the same account and any leftover money can be deposited to a new account. I think this is why she was very upset. She felt a huge loss of control knowing she won't be able to monitor my finances. Also, she felt a huge loss in her leftover money with this arrangement and saw that I would keep significantly more of my own. This is still being worked out because I think she is calling my bluff here, but my plan is to notify her next week as I modify my direct deposit and open a new account. It will definitely be more real there. To be clear, for all the trolls here, yes, she will have less leftover money after responsibilities and it's still enough to live on. Example, for reference. Assume I make $3,000 a month, she makes $1,000 a month. Responsibilities are $1,000 a month. So she'd contribute $500 and I would contribute $500. Where before she would contribute only $250. This is the last comment I'll add regarding money and finances. She's fine and she's not hurting. I promise when asked what if she leaves for another man interesting. She has no shortage of men hitting on her and we're by no means jealous people. So I've witnessed this multiple times and her reactions are somewhat indifferent. I will say, if another man for her was the answer, she'd tell me or she'd have some inkling maybe. There's no telling, but I think the problem is deeper than superficial attention from a different person. You might be right, and if this is the case, so be it. However, I'll live with peace knowing I left no stone left unturned. Crazy thought, I know I would be disappointed and saddened if she did leave for another man that would accept the bare minimum. But I'd also feel at peace knowing it's not all my fault. I know I'm responsible in some way to some degree. That's just marriage. I know sadness and depression will creep but we'll both overcome, but if this does happen at least there will be clear reasons and clarity as to why it did. Also, I know for a fact that she wouldn't cheat. We're both very blunt, open and transparent. She would definitely tell me that she wants to step out on our marriage before it actually happens. As would I. We owe ourselves this respect for each other and we actively practice it. New update. I debated for a long time on whether to submit an update on this matter. A few significant changes have taken place and I felt it would be good to not only share with you, but also to allow myself to process all of this in a uniform way. We're now almost 9 weeks in on the 180 method I mentioned I was starting and it started to render some positive reactions from my wife. I explained in the previous post that she started to notice things that she previously took for granted, started to ask more about my whereabouts and also started to notice I would go out with the kids more often without her and she started to invite herself, to which I didn't decline. So much has changed and it has changed for what seems to be for the better. This past Memorial Day weekend, my wife asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee because she wanted to talk to me about something. This was huge, because I can't recall the last time my wife asked to talk to me about something important. I must admit, I was very nervous and worried about what this could be about and my mind was racing with the plethora of scenarios of what it could possibly be. Of course I agreed and we took some time away from the kids to have this conversation at a local coffee shop. The talk was very constructive in nature. There was a ton of insightful information about herself that helped me further understand where she is in life both emotionally and mentally. We summarized what the core issues we are encountering are and she asked me for help. This is new and I cannot tell you how excited I was to hear something so sincere coming from my wife who for the last 2+ years has been absent. So after she was through sharing all her thoughts, I proposed a plan that I felt was right for us. This is something that I had been thinking about these last few weeks and I was planning on bringing this up in a few months if I noticed that things were not changing for the better. This date felt like the right place to share it since it goes hand in hand with what she talked about, and it also relates to the help she was asking me for. I started by first acknowledging her feelings and her concerns. I told her they are valid and how she feels is personal to her and that I care that she feels this way because I don't like the thought of her being sad or depressed. I also told her that my goal still is and will always be for us to reconcile and be the happily ever after we vowed to be for each other, and that my love for her is as strong, if not stronger, as it was the day we said I do. I continued the conversation by telling her how I felt about the whole situation, read my previous posts for details, and how it affects me every day. I also clarified some things that she mentioned she was feeling because I have been very distant and monotone, transactional, lately. I explained to her that I was very much trying to protect my feelings and emotions from the rejection and neglect and that it wasn't personal. It was simply me safeguarding myself because I cannot control her, I can only control myself. This was a perfect segue way to the core of this approach, which is focused on self-accountability. I told her that for the longest time I was always working hard to make her happy and do things that I knew she enjoyed or wanted. However, I was always met with rejection and disappointment, which caused a load of stress on me. I explained to her that I had to make a change for myself. After all, I can only control myself and make the changes that I want for myself. I mentioned how I was starting to implement new habits and routines that help edify me all while still executing all of our shared responsibilities, including parenting, finances, and daily living activities. I explained that the goal is to continue to improve myself both as a husband and father, learn more, and be healthier, among other things. She was very receptive to this. She told me that she sees what I'm doing and that she is proud of the changes she has seen. She also told me how she's starting to realize that she feels left behind and that much of the things that have affected her negatively are her own fault. Toward the end of the conversation, which was about 3 hours, there was a very high spirit of reconciliation in the room. I told her that my goal is to ultimately make this work. However, I was very clear that I was not going to live under the current circumstances. I told her that my heart wants her to be happy even if it means elsewhere, and that I also deserve to be happy myself. I also explained that I do not want our children to grow up thinking this was okay or normal because they deserve better as well. She told me she doesn't either. She told me she doesn't know what to do, to which I replied, let's set some clear goals. However, the goals will be for ourselves, not for each other. So here is what we established. We are in charge of our own happiness. The key here is that she's not responsible for making me happy, and vice versa. We both need to seek what that personal plan looks like individually. Also, we're both encouraged to include each other in taking those steps if we want, but it is not required. We are in control of our own individual lives and our own journey. This means we're both responsible for finding the resources necessary to grow, change, and heal. We can definitely help one another when help is requested. However, unsolicited advice or help will not be rendered. We are responsible for communicating. This ensures nothing is left unsaid. If it was never brought up or discussed, it never happened. We're not mind readers, and we need to take ownership when we fail to communicate. Make a list of needs and wants. This gives us both clear directions about meeting each other's needs. This also gives us a choice as to what we choose to do, compromise on, or decline to do. This list also will not serve as a checklist for accountability. We made it clear we would not be bringing this list up for the purpose of arguing. And it was up to the other person to use the list as a tool for growth, transparency, or clarification. We concluded that it was up to us to decide if we will be happy doing these things for ourselves because we care, not to simply check a box. This was very important in order to establish long-term habits and not short-term band-aids, because you cannot make someone change or do something they don't believe is important. Established a deadline, Memorial Day 2025. At the end of the conversation, we concluded by setting Memorial Day 2025 as a hard stop to evaluate our lives and our progress. We agreed we would do this with the clear understanding that we will independently decide if we are happy here. If we determine we aren't happy, we will be getting a divorce. We would also both assume full responsibility for what happened should we get divorced. For example, if needs were not met, it would mean my partner chose not to meet them. This places full responsibility on each other in all areas. The whole process requires that if needs were not met, the next question should be, did we do everything to address this issue? If yes, then we will have a clear conscience of what transpired and know we left no stone unturned. If, however, we didn't do everything to address the issue, it will mean the issue was not important enough for you or didn't care to meet those needs. This goes both ways in all areas, like everything else. We established that the main motivator for change should be ourselves, and that if we did that, we would in turn begin to see beneficial changes towards each other. The goal is to ensure that everything we are doing for one another to meet each other's needs is being done because we want to do it for our spouse, not because she asked. Instead, it was done because I know it makes him her happy and I love seeing them happy. I felt it was important to mention to her that we are no longer required to do anything for each other. It is now more of a I want to do these things for each other. Ultimately, I felt the conversation was very positive and productive. Many tears were shed and lots of hugging ensued. I know this doesn't mean or guarantee anything, however, this has never happened before and I can honestly attribute it to the 180 method. I cannot give any more insight on this method other than it's the only thing I did differently and something new happened for what seems to be better. I've decided I will conclude and will refrain from this method moving forward as the plan now has changed. I'm planning to devote myself entirely to not only myself and my growth but to also work on her needs and wants because I want her to be happy by my side. She said and agreed she would do the same for herself. We agreed we would help and build each other wherever we request for it and that we will be approaching this as a team. As of today, some of the biggest changes I have noticed are her commitment to therapy and mental health. She is taking some antidepressants that are helping her. She is also more confident and in a far better mood more frequently. We have started to explore more ways of intimacy in multiple areas such as physical touch and words of affirmation. Sex is starting to make an appearance which is exciting. Side note, sex was very awkward to start when you've been abstinent for so long. We've also started to work out together which is great and have lost weight which is also very exciting. Overall, communication has improved, and I cannot wait to see where this leads. I hope this helps someone out there. I'm still very much interested in your feedback and thoughts on this. You all have been a huge help in giving me hope and insight into this tough journey. Trolls aside, many of you have really been instrumental in my journey both emotionally and mentally. I will not be providing any more updates until Memorial Day next year. I think it's now time to keep focusing on myself and start working on all the new opportunities that hopefully will arise with my wife. I wish you all the best in life and your relationships with those you love. TLDR, our marriage took a turn for the better after the 180 method and we're now working on ourselves, each other and rekindling our marriage. We also set a deadline for next year to either remain together or get divorced. Am I the asshole for telling my husband that I will divorce him tomorrow because he doesn't clean anymore? I'm at my wit's end. Everything changed after marriage and I couldn't tell you why. Our biggest problem is cleaning. My husband used to clean up after himself but after marriage he just completely stopped with no warning. We were dating for 3 years, engaged for 1, and now freshly married. We're 28 and 29. After we got married my husband stopped cleaning. He wouldn't pick up after himself, wouldn't do his agreed upon chores and suddenly became a slob. It was like he's been intentionally dirtying things up. I stopped doing all of my housework out of protest a month into our marriage and I now live in complete and utter filth. I'm rarely home due to the mess. I live part-time with my sister at this point and he doesn't even care. I come home only to sleep at night and sometimes I don't even come home at all. It's like we aren't even married anymore and it's draining my mental health to the point where I've had multiple breakdowns this month. I'm completely over it. I wanted to get married but this is not the man I married. I would much rather be home where I belong, but I'm not a maid. The mess is as follows. Wet food in the sink from him throwing his plate, finished or not, in there. Bugs, garbage littered everywhere, puddles of mystery substances. The trash is never taken out. All of his laundry is dirty, clothes unfolded, crumbs galore, takeout everywhere since he won't cook. Dishes piled to the skies. I can guarantee you there's more, but I can't describe it right. It's like he's a toddler. It's exactly like mommy isn't cleaning up so he's tornadoing through our house and not caring. Before he would scrape his plate, rinse it, then leave it. He would take the trash outside and take the cans to the curb, he'd sweep, vacuum, occasionally do laundry and he would never eat in the bed. Now he does it all. A few hours ago I told him that if he doesn't clean up tonight then I'm divorcing him tomorrow. I said if I don't see some progress on the house then we're over. He told me that I'm being an asshole for no reason and that cleaning is no longer his job. I nearly popped a fucking blood vessel. We did not decide on that. He's telling me that I'm throwing everything away over pride and that all new marriages go through this transition. Bull fucking shit. He told his mom and she called me not too long ago and told me that I need to calm down and reconcile. I really love my MIL and she's one of the most level-headed people I know, hence the reason I'm writing this post. She's making me wonder if divorce is too far because it's only a mess, but it's a mess. She told me that we can reach a compromise, and that we need to take a breather and talk about it all, but I truthfully do not want to. She reminded me of our good times and that life won't always be the way it is now, but I'm feeling incredibly skeptical. I cannot stand filth and I can't live like this even if it's for him. Am I the asshole? Edit. After writing a long comment, I'm done. I know I just posted, but I truly am done. My mill made me second guess myself, but all I needed was to think about it all and hear an outside opinion, even if it's just one. He fooled me for 4 years and marriage is not trapping me. He used to clean up after himself and be the most wonderful partner. It's a real shame that he showed his true colors after we paid so much for our wedding.